Hey out there, movie fans. Nick Cicada coming in hot with yet another scintillating movie review here from the hallway. I just got back from the movie theater watching Francis Ford Coppola's new movie, Megalopolis, and I'm ready to tell you all about it and what I think about it. And I'm very eager and excited to get into this one because this was a fantastic movie, and for once it's a very positive, cheery review from me here because this is a great movie. So let's get into it. Let's talk about what Megalopolis is, why you should see it before it gets out of theaters. At the time of recording, it's been in theaters about 2 weeks. It'll probably be in about 2 more weeks, but you should go see it initially because it's a darn good movie. So let's talk about why Megalopolis is such a great, phenomenal film. And I know I'm not exactly Siskel and Ebert, but I'll have to do for the time being because both of them are dead. Okay, so we're talking about Megalopolis, the Francis Ford Coppola movie. This might be Francis Ford Coppola's last movie. I wouldn't be surprised if it is. If it is, that's fine. This is the kind of movie that any director could hope to potentially go out on. I like Francis Ford Coppola's movies a great deal. I haven't seen all of them, and he's not one of my favorite directors, but I do have a great deal of respect. I mean, obviously, he's made some of the all-time classics. I've seen Apocalypse Now about 5 times, and I like it a little more each time. It's one of those films that really grows on you. I've seen The Godfather 1 and 2. I haven't seen Godfather Part 3, but, you know, what you gonna do? I like both of those okay. And this new one, Megalopolis, is a bizarre genre mashup. It's a very nice experimental film. Obviously, if there's one theme that defines Coppola's career, it's his battle with the big Hollywood studios and his desire to make more independent productions where he has directorial control. Obviously, that's very important to him. I've seen his Dracula, which I didn't think was that great. I mean, obviously it's not going to compare to the Bela Lugosi version, or even Nosferatu, really, if I'm being honest, but the Dracula is very memorable, and it tries to do a lot of things that were in the book. Obviously, it tries and adapts that a little more accurately, sort of like how the Robert De Niro Frankenstein tries to adapt the Frankenstein book a little more accurately than the Universal version, which is an admirable goal. Both of those came out around the same time-ish. So Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula I would recommend if you're like a hardcore Dracula fan, but there are a lot of techniques in it, obviously, that are carried over from silent movies. Francis Ford Coppola is a very technical guy. He uses a lot of techniques and stuff that don't necessarily carry over into a modern format, but that's one of the nice little idiosyncrasies and things that you pick up on if you watch enough of his movies, is that he's very technical. He's very detail-oriented. Megalopolis is no exception. Megalopolis is a very unique, original concept. It's the type of movie with an original plot that I oftentimes wait for. I wait for a movie with some original stuff, and Megalopolis delivers the goods. Here's a movie not based on a pre-existing franchise like Dune. As much as I like the new Dune movies, and I can talk about how they're decent adaptations of the book, they're adaptations of a book, and what Francis Ford Coppola has going on here is really interesting, because it's not like an adaptation of Dracula. It's not even like Apocalypse Now, which is technically an adaptation of Heart of Darkness. What we have here is a really wacky retelling of actual events that took place in ancient Rome that Francis Ford Coppola was interested in and decided to reinterpret them in a modern setting, adding in sci-fi elements, adding in drama elements, and a great deal of comedy. There's a lot of funny bits in this movie too. So overall, it's a very thrilling, interesting, thought-provoking genre mashup, and it's the type of movie that I think Francis Ford Coppola has wanted to make all along. But now he's so rich, obviously, and he's at the end of his career that he can just go ahead and blow all his money on this big, expensive dream project. Honestly, good on him. More directors should do this. Once you get to a certain point, just say, screw the studios, I'm going to go my own way, go it alone, complete directorial control. This is the way movies are meant to be. It's how movies end up the best. It's the complete opposite of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where the director is just a figurehead. It's actually a director who gives a shit and is hands-on with his own fucking movie, which, you know, I'd expect, and should be, again, be the way that movies are made. I don't know how people don't recognize that, like, this is how competent films are made, but yeah, you've got to give a director creative control, or it's not going to be a good movie. Anyway, Megalopolis is a very divisive film because it is technically about politics, although the politics it talks about are very abstract and they take place in a sort of metaphorical science fiction setting. So a lot of people, I imagine, hate this movie because it doesn't necessarily pick a side. It doesn't say, this idea is great, this idea is horrible. It's not a divisive film. It's not like angsty or anything. It's very measured, it's very thought-provoking, and it asks you, the viewer, to decide what you think is right. It doesn't make up your mind for you. And I think that's why so many people hate this movie, is they feel like movies have to explain everything. That's fucking stupid. You should be able to make up your own mind about a movie. Like, you know, Apocalypse Now, great example. Is Colonel Kurtz right? Is Willard right? Are they both wrong? Who's in the right? Who's in the wrong? Maybe neither of them are in the right. They're morally complex characters in a morally complex situation. This is what movies should be. Movies shouldn't just be a fucking morality play. It's not medieval times anymore. I think that people who ascribe to this sort of reductive good versus evil storytelling, part of the problem with that, and this is what I describe it to as a secular humanist, is a stupid literature like the Bible that boils everything down to tribalism and us versus them, and oh, we're the Judaic tribes, we're great, but the Philistines are evil, and they have their evil giant Goliath, but our Yahweh is great, and all this type stuff is just dumb. So one of the things I really like about Megalopolis is it's a fucking Roman story for once. Obviously, I like the Roman Empire. I'm on record as saying this. I really fucking admire the ancient Romans. I think they were cool as fuck. And all too often, in popular media, they are vilified and painted as corrupt bastards, which is goofy, because if the Romans were corrupt bastards, then we, as Americans, are corrupt bastards. Now, this movie obviously draws a lot of parallels between America and Rome. This isn't an original idea. It's been done before. Lots of people have pointed out the similarities between the American Empire and the Roman Empire, because in many ways America is an extension of the Roman Empire. It is the closest thing to a modern successor that the Roman Empire has, but that's not because necessarily America is a bad thing, quite the opposite. It's because America carries over the values that were great about the Roman Empire, that we value progress, technology, secular humanism, that we value the contributions of civilization and like rational thought. And I really appreciate that, because here for once we have a movie that adequately captures the excitement and fun and intrigue of the Roman Empire without just making every Roman a corrupt bastard for no fucking reason, which is just reductive and stupid. One thing that should be mentioned is you should not go into this movie expecting an alternate history scenario. A lot of people will go into it like that, like, oh, what if the Roman Empire never fell? Like that Star Trek episode, Bread and Circuses. But this isn't that. It's not an alternate history, because often the characters refer to the country in which they're in as America. The American flag is shown at several points. Sometimes it's with like the 13 original colonies circle. Sometimes it's with 50 stars. You got Elvis in there at one point. You got references to Frank Sinatra. You also have one of the characters say Jesus Christ at one point as an expletive, so you can assume that these characters know who Jesus is or have some equivalent of that in their world. But the other way to look at it is that this world isn't like a concrete representation of any real place. It's more so an ideal. The new Rome that Francis Ford Coppola has constructed is a completely like imaginary place that doesn't need to make any sense. And I think all too often people who dabble in alternate history focus way too much on the minutia. This is a very common complaint I have with alternate history stuff, like The Man in the High Castle, or what's the other one? The Yiddish Policeman's Union, Plot Against America. Especially that Harry Turtledove stuff. Like, it goes way too deep into stuff that just like does not need to be detailed in this much fucking gravitas. But what Megalopolis does is it just says, hey, America and Rome have a lot in common. Here's a world that's kind of like both, where the characters are kind of confused about where they're living. Things are uncertain. Some things don't even literally happen. Some things are just like visual metaphor. And it's up to the viewer to decide what they accept is like literal fact and what isn't, what's just a pretty visual. And that's fine, because again, Francis Ford Coppola uses techniques in his films that are of like the silent movie era, like vignettes and interstitial title cards and shit that obviously don't happen in modern movies. But this kind of reminds me of when people like shit on Attack of the Clones, because Padme and Anakin talk like old movie stars with like the older style of acting, as opposed to like the more naturalistic, newer style of acting. And so people are like, oh, Anakin sounds so stupid, Padme sounds so stupid. But they just don't know what old acting is like. They don't know what, like, you know, Ingrid Bergman or whatever is like, so they just like assume, oh, George Lucas is such an idiot, his characters talk in this melodramatic way, when it's supposed to be like that. It's a space opera. So anyone who attacks Megalopolis for having like scenes that aren't meant to be taken literally, visuals that are kind of weird and out there, obviously just don't understand the visual language of film, and that film as a visual medium can have things in it that aren't meant to be taken entirely literally. You can do weird, fun shit with a moving image that represents something that isn't like a literal part of the story. It is basic stuff, and I don't get how people still don't understand that. Again, the Marvel fans, these fucking idiots who just don't even care about movies. They just like seeing fucking Star-Lord or whatever. I don't get these people. So yeah, this movie shouldn't be approached from like a literal point of view. Don't go in expecting some like high concept alternate history, Rome never collapsed scenario, because that's not what you're going to get. What you're going to get is a celebration ultimately of secular humanism. This is one of the reasons I really like this movie, is because it says a lot about secular humanism, which is the school of philosophy that I ascribe to. In fact, it might be maybe the most secular humanist fucking movie ever made, because it is about, again, a society that openly celebrates secular humanism. There's no religion or anything. I think Kronos is mentioned at like one point, but you don't get the idea that these Romans like worship the Roman pantheon even, because again, ancient Rome didn't really. They just considered these things like representations of abstract concepts. They didn't fanatically worship them in the same way that modern Christianity worships Yahweh. That's a popular misconception, because ancient Rome was a functional country that worked like I think a country should work. I would not prefer the papal Catholic states to the Roman Empire. I think anyone who would is delusional. So this is a great movie because it celebrates the Roman Empire and their achievements. The Colosseum scene isn't depicted as like brutal or horrible or anything. It's just fun entertainment. There's just a fun chariot race, and then there's the bit about the Vestal Virgins, which I thought was really funny. It's like a parody of Pop Stars, how like the Vestal Virgin is like lowered on this moon and she's like strumming on a ukulele. It's really funny because in modern society, obviously pop stars are like hypersexualized. So the joke here is that this Vestal Virgin pop star is like donated to stay a virgin, which is really funny, and is especially funny to me as an asexual. But this movie obviously does point out that like the Roman celebrations in the Roman society is very hedonistic. It's very pleasurable. It's very given into bouts of opulence, which again is one thing I prefer about the Roman Empire. They were a cool society that had parties and shit. It wasn't just all this boring ass Sunday mass, tacky ass Amish Quaker nonsense. It was like, let's have some fun. Let's do a dance. Let's go to this party and fucking eat grapes and have a good fucking time. And New Rome really comes to life in an extremely vivid way by realizing this opulent, decadent spectacle. It's really marvelous. I enjoy watching the gladiatorial bit, the part with Saturnalia especially. Instead of celebrating Christmas, this society celebrates Saturnalia. It's fucking cool. I love Saturnalia. What a cool holiday. You know, I'd honestly rather celebrate Saturnalia than Christmas. The same way I love Halloween, because it's like the only secular holiday that doesn't have any religious shit bogging it down. I like Saturnalia. Honestly, I might just call it Saturnalia this year. Why the fuck not, right? Anyway, yeah, this movie paints Saturnalia in a really cool light. You can tell Francis Ford Coppola has a lot of respect for this Roman stuff and did his research into it, because this is a fantastic interpretation of what a modern Rome would look like if it carried American principles and you had kind of this merging of Roman and American ideals. This is what it would be like. So it's fantastic in that regard. It's very, very accurate. One of the complaints that's made about this movie is that it's confusing, which I don't understand. Again, not every scene is meant to be taken literally, but the plot as it unfolds is relatively easy to get. Cicero represents, like, conservatism. Caesar represents progressivism, or, like, new ideas. Again, vaguely, it's not like necessarily that this is an accurate one-for-one metaphor for like the right and the left necessarily. It's just that Cicero is like an old-fashioned kind of guy, but he's not presented as like this evil villain, this horrible person for liking older-fashioned stuff. He's just presented as a bit reluctant, which, you know, people can be to try new things. And then you have Adam Driver's character, who's like cool and brilliant and has all these interesting ideas about the future and sees a lot of potential in humanity, which is how I think progressivism should be, is to see potential in what humanity can accomplish. Again, this points out a actual nuance that actually existed in real Roman society between people who maybe liked the Republic more, people who maybe liked the Empire more, people who were interested in different sects and politics and all this stuff, all this fantastic, interesting minutiae of the Roman Empire that is lost to time. This movie recaptures wonderfully that, like, Romans were actual people. All too often we depict them as like villains because, oh no, they crucified Jesus. I don't give a shit about Jesus. I like Julius Caesar because I actually admire people who achieve things during their lifetime. I don't like Jesus, like as a person. I like Julius Caesar. Now there's a guy worth looking up to and using as a role model. Again, this is a very humanist film. It's very unique in that regard. So I can see why maybe modern audiences who have been through a millennia and a half of Jesus probably don't like it, because it actually says, hey, let's celebrate humanity. Let's celebrate humanity's achievements for once. So I can see why this isn't a very popular film, especially among that crowd. It's just something I notice as an atheist. There's one point where Adam Driver's character mentions something that is actually very profound, which is, this isn't the exact quote, but when he's in the circus scene, he says, if man can create gods, if man has the power to create gods, and gods can affect this much power over the human psyche, why can't we ourselves simply implement that power for our own benefit? Which I think is a really cool idea, and again, a very secular humanist type of thing to say, which is just really awesome. I love seeing this kind of thing because it's a very inspiring movie. My gosh, I haven't seen a movie this fucking secular humanist in a long fucking time. Again, this might be the most secular humanist movie ever made. I don't know. The other school of thought which Megalopolis tackles is Claudio, played by Shia LaBeouf, who is kind of the populist type character, and it's explained that he pretends to be on the side of the working class, but he's really a spoiled dipshit. So one could interpret this as left-wing or right-wing populism. Obviously, it comes in both varieties. Trump uses this exact tactic. He's like, "Oh, I'm on the side of the little farmers." I do a very good Trump impression, but he's like, "Oh, I'm on the side of the farmers. I'm on the side of the little guy. I'll help you. I'll help the little American." Classic populism. So Claudio is like a populist type character who stands in the way of progress by starting this fake nonsense revolution, even though he doesn't actually have any ideas about progress or how to fix things or how to actually address societal issues, which is a very accurate interpretation of populism. So he's the third idea expressed besides straightforward conservatism and progressivism, which is what Catalina represents. So yeah, this movie is a very easy movie to understand. The events happen in a very straightforward way. It's set in a blend of America and Rome. Adam Driver's character gets shot. Adam Driver's character falls in love with the mayor's daughter. Claudio fakes a video. Okay, I get all this. I don't understand how audiences wouldn't understand what's happening unless they've never seen a movie before that's not a Marvel movie, because other movies have visual metaphor and montage and shit. It's just Francis Ford Coppola, again, having such a love for film and film history, goes into these techniques a little more than the average, but I don't know how we as a movie-going audience have become so visually illiterate that we just claim that a movie isn't understandable, even though it very much fucking is. This movie has a beginning, middle, end. It makes sense from beginning, middle to end. The characters are introduced. The characters have a happy ending. Yippee. It's a movie that makes complete sense to me. You'd have to be an absolute idiot not to understand the plot of this film. It's very, very straightforward. One thing that I should definitely note is Adam Driver is amazing in this movie. Adam Driver is one of those actors who, I'll admit, I saw The Force Awakens in theaters when it came out. I was 13 at the time. I didn't get the hype really. I saw this Adam Driver guy. I was like, okay. Mainly just because the Star Wars movies are so bad, but he's really come into his own as an actor. I said in my Dune review I don't really like Zendaya or Timothée Chalamet much, but I do like Adam Driver. I think he's one of the good new actors, and definitely if he sticks to stuff like this and avoids Star Wars from now on, which based on everything he said he probably will, I think he has some very promising roles ahead of him. I mean, his SNL sketches are always hilarious. There's the medieval times one, that one's great. The one in the restaurant with Cicely Strong, that one's hilarious. He's great on SNL, and he's in some good fucking movies. Oh yeah, he was in The Last Duel too. I like The Last Duel. So he's one of these actors who really chews the scenery and has a great presence. He's very cool, and the Shakespeare bit that he delivers. Again, there's all this stuff that just would not exist in a world where the Roman Empire didn't collapse. There's Shakespeare, there's the Hamlet monologue exactly as it is, which obviously wouldn't happen because Shakespeare, if he had existed at all, would have written plays that were way different under a remaining Roman Empire than under Elizabethan London. So obviously that's a sign that this isn't set in, again, a straightforward alternate history. But I would say that Adam Driver has a lot of presence. He's very charismatic. And one thing which this movie really captures is the frenzied mania of creation, which I can relate to a lot. This is a very accurate portrayal of that, where even when you're surrounded by people who love you and you have a lot of a lot of backing on your side. The plethora of ideas that are going on in your head is just like overwhelming, and I can definitely relate to that. So that's a very accurate portrayal. Obviously, Francis Ford Coppola probably feels this way. He's gone his entire career just getting shut down by all these fucking Hollywood middlemen who tell him what to do. Oh, you can't do this, you can do this, oh, your ideas are stupid. Obviously, it's a representation of that. It's kind of a stand-in. But yeah, Adam Driver's performance is fan-fucking-tastic. It's a great, fun time through and through. He's a very likable character, obviously. Shia LaBeouf and I forget what her character is called, but the ex, the blonde one who has like all this promiscuous sex, obviously are presented as like these unlikable, overindulgent assholes. But by contrast, Adam Driver's character and the mayor's daughter are like very reserved, sane, rational people who like just want to, you know, better the world and like actually explore various possibilities. And I like that. It's a very grounded, likable set of characters. Even the mayor, who's like, I guess some people kind of think he's the villain, is painted in a very sympathetic light, where like they don't like fight or anything. It's just like a very measured exchange of ideas, which is totally reasonable. So it's worth talking about, obviously, the controversy that comes along with this movie, which there is some controversy. There was a trailer with like fake AI quotes, but the guy who made it was fired, because obviously if you use fake quotes that don't exist to market a movie, makes sense to me. Guy got fired. That's way better than a case like Late Night with the Devil, where there's literally AI in the fucking movie, and it's just like total shit. And I feel like I got scammed by the devil watching Late Night with the Devil. Megalopolis, I'll give Francis Ford Coppola the benefit of the doubt here and assume that in a film about secular humanity and like the preservation of the human spirit that he didn't know about, it's just some marketing fucking blunder or something. And that's certainly reasonable. It's not like a totally bad faith scenario like Late Night with the fucking Devil. And also, the other accusation that's made against this movie is that, like, Francis Ford Coppola is a sex predator. Oh, he kisses some women on set or hugs them or whatever. He's like 80. I doubt this guy cares that much about sex at his age. Like, the movie has sex in it because the characters are like, you know, different. Some of them have, like, very open sex. Some are a little more reserved, you know, it's a various portrayal of humanity, but I don't really buy that Francis Ford Coppola is this deranged maniac. Like, he's not fucking Roman Polanski. I think, honestly, in this case, this is total bullshit. I think this movie is being slandered by people who just don't like it. It's being pissed on by the exact Hollywood establishment that's been pissing on Coppola's movies for decades. This is an extremely predictable scenario. And so you can say, oh, if there's this scene in a club and Francis Ford Coppola might hug some actress or something, oh, all of a sudden he's a serial rapist. I don't buy this at all. I think Hollywood just has it in for Francis Ford Coppola, which is predictable. They didn't want this movie to be made. It's not the type of movie that Marvel is going to make or Disney's going to make. It's not a movie made to be, like, popular. And it's not the type of movie that even should be popular. If people don't like this movie, good. It's not for them. They can go back to watching fucking Moon Knight or whatever the fuck Marvel is making at this point. For the rest of us, people who actually enjoy movies, I think this is a movie worth watching, and you should watch it. And don't just close your mind to it because of this obvious smear campaign. I don't even say that things are a smear campaign that often. If, like, for instance, Justin Roiland, the Rick and Morty shithead, is accused of sexual misconduct, fuck yeah, I'll buy that in a heartbeat. That guy is a fucking idiot, and he just looks like the kind of guy who doesn't know how to have a functional relationship. Francis Ford Coppola, on the other hand, is a guy so professional who seems like such a competent director. I really don't buy that he'd just be like a total fucking gropey maniac on the set or anything. And if so, like, why don't any of his other movies reflect that, you know? I don't buy it, again. I try my best to weigh these things. I just don't see it. I think people just are trying to shit on this movie for no reason, not actually giving the movie a chance. Let's just dunk on it. Let's make it a failure. Even though it's like Coppola's fucking magnum opus, it's the last thing he's going to make before he fucking dies. It's like if people shit on Killers of the Flower Moon or something. Like, just let these aging directors make one more fucking movie and don't try and, like, shit on them, you know? They're going to make a good damn movie before they die. Okay, let's just let them do that, please. Fucking ridiculous. So yeah, I see right through that nonsense. I don't buy into it. I think this movie just gets a lot of bad press because it's not the kind of movie that's made to be a big crowd pleaser. It's very thought-provoking, pretty weird. You have to think during it, and it doesn't tell you what to think. It doesn't make up your fucking mind for you. Good. That's what I expect out of a competent movie. That's what I'd expect out of Francis Ford Coppola. There's nothing aberrant here. It is completely in line with the rest of his filmography. So, yeah, overall, I think Megalopolis is a fantastic movie that really has to be seen to be believed. There's a good deal of CGI in it, but there's also a great deal of very inventive practical effects, and obviously a lot of film techniques like shadows, and there's all kinds of cool shit that hasn't been seen in movies for years and years that Coppola brings back to the forefront. So I would recommend this for movie enjoyers, classic movie enjoyers, people who like ancient Rome, history buffs, frickin' secular humanists, obviously, is a big demographic. Atheists, sure, why not? I wouldn't recommend this movie for Marvel fans, but fuck you. You're responsible for the death of an entire art form by supporting this crap. It's not that time anymore. Marvel's had its day in the sun. It's over. And I'm glad we're getting movies like this again that are competent, well-made, interesting, original, most importantly. And this is one of the best movies of the 2020s, hands down. If I make a best-of list at the end of the decade, this will be on it. And there's a good chance neither Dune movie will be on it. Honestly, this is better than both Dune movies, because unlike those, which just shit on the legacy of the David Lynch movie, which is better than both of them, and are based on a pre-existing book, this is an original, big-budget movie that takes itself seriously, pours all the money it can into itself. Coppola completely self-funded the thing. Good on him. He deserves the right to be able to fucking do that. And yeah, it's just a great movie. Obviously, this movie is meant to be unifying. It's not meant to be divisive. The whole message of the movie is people can get along. People can work together to create a brighter future. They have to actually give a shit, but yeah, people can do better and improve themselves. And it celebrates free will, personal autonomy, all things that I believe in a great deal and which are core tenets of secular humanism, when you're not bound to the will of some omniscient, non-existent deity, when you make your own decisions, forge your own path ahead. This is the kind of character that Caesar Catalina is, and he's a fascinating protagonist, because you think he's a little goofy and a little wacko in the head, but hey, he's right. People can make their own decisions, and the speech he gives at the end about how people shouldn't reduce themselves to the level of brutes is fantastic. This is the kind of movie that we need in the age of AI, when there's all this bullshit that is completely anti-humanist and just total nonsense about how people can't create great things or do great things. And yeah, it's a celebration of human ingenuity and the creative spirit, which, you know, obviously is not going to be popular when you have people who have all this vested interest in tearing all of that down and destroying it. So I can see why Francis Ford Coppola isn't the most popular. Also, there's controversial actors here. Shia LaBeouf, Jon Voight. Jon Voight's on the right. Okay, whatever. His character's fun to watch, and he's old. He'll be dead soon. Whatever. The same way if Mel Gibson makes a movie, I don't necessarily just write it off as bad. Hey, maybe it's good. Right before this, the trailer for Flight Plan played, which Mel Gibson directs, but it didn't look that good. So I guess, Mel Gibson kind of fell off. But that's besides the point. I don't think you should necessarily dismiss an actor or director just because they're necessarily controversial or they have a controversial opinion. Honestly, if Adam Driver, freaking Giancarlo Esposito, Jon Voight, Francis Ford Coppola can all collaborate together on one movie that's about like the unification of people despite differences, that's a testament to that it's true. People can just unify and see past their petty differences and arrive at something beautiful, which is a fine message to send. And you can tell that Francis Ford Coppola, again, really stands by his laurels by hiring people like Jon Voight or Shia LaBeouf, who are kind of washed-up has-beens past their prime, but are interesting to watch nonetheless. And I don't mind that they're in the movie. I'm not going to complain about that. I'm well past that immature phase of my life. One other thing that should be mentioned, and I think this is a very important point, is I've wondered for so long, why aren't there as many utopian movies as there are dystopian movies? Why do we have so many goddamn 1984s, Brave New Worlds, Hunger Gameses, Divergences, Maze Runners, The Fifth Waves and why don't we have movies about societies that function and are cool and nice to be in? Why is everything so doom and gloom? And why do we as people consider scenarios that are bad inherently more interesting than ones that are good and cool? I think this kind of ties back into some kind of intrinsic negativity bias that we have, where we assume that a negative scenario will inherently result in more conflict than a positive one. There's a lot of conflict in this movie, but in the end, the result is a utopian paradise that Adam Driver invents that's cool and fun and works. And he points out a lot of interesting ideas about a utopia. There's even a point in the movie where the mayor character points out, oh, all utopias lead to dystopias. And Adam Driver's like, well, we won't even know that if we don't take a risk, will we? Hey, let's try building a society that fucking works instead of just assuming that all humans have a disposition to tear each other's goddamn throats out. Which is such a grounded, realistic take that I have not seen in any other movie for such a long fucking time. Because these negative bullshit tales like 1984, fucking whatever, Handmaid's Tale, it's all just sad, depressing shit. And it's so refreshing to see a happy movie that's about happy people enjoying the human experience for once. There shouldn't be so much to ask. It's an interesting movie that actually, asks an interesting question that's different for once. This is, again, not only maybe the most secular humanist movie ever made, also one of the only utopian movies, except, that shitty fucking, Tomorrowland remake that came out back in the day, and it's, Brad Bird or whatever, it's a pile of shit. It's so weird that there aren't more utopian movies, because a utopia is just as interesting as a dystopia, and I'd argue more challenging. It's more challenging to imagine a perfect society where everything works than a shitty society where nothing works, because we've had plenty of those throughout history. It's not that deep. It's been done to fucking death. So yeah, Megalopolis is a fantastic movie that I really enjoyed. It is visually stunning. The acting is great. It's very different. All the techniques, again, are just so fucking cool. And there's not a second where I was bored throughout this. Anyone who says that this is a bad movie is anti-intellectual. I don't use that term loosely. Being anti-academic and anti-intellectual are different things. Being anti-academic is acknowledging that the idea that people can pay their way into being smart is like fundamentally broken. And being anti-intellectual is just like being against intelligence generally, just being against people who have ideas. Megalopolis is a movie about ideas. It's a movie about building the future, improving the state of society. And it's the type of movie that legitimate anti-intellectuals will hate, because anti-intellectuals hate ideas. I don't think Francis Ford Coppola takes a very academic approach to ideas or intelligence. He's more concerned with an artistic perspective, a sort of instinctive, intuitive type of intelligence. So obviously the ideas he explores are going to come through that vein. But it is the type of movie that you would only hate if you hate ideas, progress, innovation. This is a movie that should just be liked. It's a damn good fucking movie. I don't get how anyone could possibly hate this movie. It's a great movie. So yeah, I am willing to give Megalopolis the coveted 10 out of 10 stars. It is an all-around fantastic film that I am so glad exists. It is the type of movie that the 2020s needs. It is obviously a great antidote to the times in which we currently find ourselves. 10 fucking big-time stars for Francis Ford Coppola's latest movie, possibly his last movie, Megalopolis. This movie is in production hell for a long time, and he finally made it, and my gosh, it's freaking great. This is a movie that more people should see. You should see it. You should go see it right now. Check it out. Enjoy it. Even if you don't enjoy it, hey, you've seen it, and it's worth seeing, believe me. Great film. 10 out of 10. Fun for everyone. Yeah, just great, spectacular movie right here. I think it will be viewed as a future classic, even if at the time people shit on it. The initial press is all, ooh, this is a dumb movie, or whatever. That'll go away. People will, in time, come to their senses and realize, oh my gosh, I wish I had gone and seen this in theaters, because it's fucking amazing. Watching this at the theater was a very surreal experience, because it was like in the little theater on the upstairs section, and downstairs there was a screening of the Blair Witch Project, and that was like a packed house. And meanwhile, in the Megalopolis theater, there were like 2 people. And I was like, you're going to see this shitty Cannibal Holocaust ripoff with like amateur-ass acting that's not even scary. It's like lame as fuck from like 20 years ago, as opposed to possibly the last movie of one of the greatest living directors of our time that's like visually breathtaking, beautiful, wonderful in every conceivable way. It was very weird that like more people went to go see a replay of the Blair Witch Project. The fucking Blair Witch Project. One of the lamest movies ever made. It's just like a fucking viral disaster than fucking Megalopolis. Which really just goes to show, you know, people do not appreciate like competent or like competent storytelling. But yeah, I mean, I saw it, so that's really all that matters. I saw this fantastic movie, and yeah, it's worth talking about. It's a damn good movie. So yeah, that's my review of Megalopolis. Let me know what you thought of it down in the comments. I'm glad to finally review a movie that I actually like. It came out in time, and get this review out on time while still topical. Gonna edit this down, but yeah, it was a great fun time all around. I really enjoyed this movie, and I think you should go see it. Nick recommends Megalopolis. It's a visual treat, just front to back, wonderful movie. So yeah, that's it for today's movie review. See ya on the flip side. Sayonara, suckers.